So welcome back everybody to the MIPA show. It's the Rosaura and I, he's doing this podcast to enlighten you all and have you all stay connected with the great resources that we have out there in the community. Today we have Omar from Xinampa. Rosaura's gonna do the intro real quick, explain who Omar is, and just continuing on with the podcast. So Rosaura, you mind introducing Omar real quick?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that introduction and welcoming. And we have today Omar Julian Perez, who is the Executive Director of Xinampa in Salinas Califas. Passing it back to Arturo for a little check-in.
Simone. And so we always do check-ins just to see how everybody's doing. Just to be, again, it's the acknowledging that we all are human, right? We all are people in this world that have a lot of common with one another, right? So we're going to be doing something different to get some badges. We're adding another little thing to it, right? So we're going to be thinking about ourselves as roses, right? What are our petals, right? So it's like basically our gift. What are our thorns? Basically our gift badges. And then our buds, rose buds, things are sprouting that we're excited for, right? So, it's something that we've so again, the petals, something that we're happy about. Thorns, something that's paying us a little bit, and then bud, something that we're excited for. So, to provide an example, I'm gonna go first, and I'm gonna pass it down to Omar. But so as a petal, I'm just glad that 2020 is over, or almost basically over, So I'm excited to see what 2021 comes to stay and brings into play. And I think there's a lot of great things to come. I think one of the stressors I always think is that because we're taking a small break, it's not full like 2 weeks on a break. There's a lot on my plate right now that I gotta do, but it's all good. I'm managing it, but it's definitely a heavier workload than it usually would be, if it was a regular month without any holiday breaks or anything like that. So workload wise, it's definitely overwhelming, but we always get through things like that. In terms of like the bud for myself, I'll say my rosebud will be again just thinking about what I want to do with Valor Voices, and I definitely see that. I don't know. I have so many ideas, and I think as one person I cannot complete them all, right? So I would definitely love to have like volunteers or like people that are supporting my vision, and so like we could continue highlighting the voices of our values to a greater extent, and all my great ideas could come to be because it's not just depending on one person, right? But yeah, those are my petals, my thorns, and my rosebuds. So I'm gonna pass it down to Omar. If you do need some explanation again, feel free to ask. But passing it down to you, man.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me here, y'all. Really excited to be a part of this and to share a little bit about Xinampa and what we do. To go into the rose petals, thorns, and buds. I think my rose petals, uh, you know, end of the year, I tend to do a lot of reflection about the past year and just thinking about all the things going on and just doing my reflections. Want to give some self-love, some appreciation and love to the people around me and all the growth that I've seen and I've had in my personally in this past year. So thankful for all of that love and support from my family, my friends, my partner, and everyone around me, and that personal growth. Some thorns on that same line. There's always things to grow on and to work at, and just thinking about all those things and the workload, also professionally workload coming into the end of the year, and just handling a lot of stuff on my plate. But going into buds, thinking about all the exciting things that Xinampa has percolating and we're cultivating in the community in the future for the next year, and I'm really excited to start rolling some of that stuff out and really getting out there and having some impact. So really excited for that. Thank you.
Orale, thank you for being here with us today. And I will say for my thorns, I don't have any particular thorns other than just I was telling you folks earlier that I woke up really early because I've been on this whole thing of like, let me get up early, get my workout in, usually around like 5:30, and then like go on about my day just so I get it out of the way. So it's been cool, but it also like means that I get really tired like around this time, or like I just need to make and create carve out space for like naps and stuff like that and resting. So just kind of ready for like that rest, that mental break, maybe a walk or just kind of laying down or something. So that would be my thorn. My rose petals are just excited that it's Friday, it's Friday, and thinking about like, okay, you know, thankful for like the roof over my head and the fact that I ate today and I drank water and I was able to work out and I have a car. And like, there's a lot of gifts once you start thinking about that. And actually, like, it, for any fans of like Big Mouth on Netflix, Gratitude. So definitely check out Gratitude and Big Mouth, right? Like when you start getting anxious and like, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed and all these things, right? Like think about gratitude and all the things that you're, that attitude of gratitude, right? Like being grateful for like different things in your life. So that's a little tidbit there. But in terms of my rosebuds, I will say that I'm actually looking forward to the weekend. Este, and I was telling these folks too, I guess as a thorn too, that like there's like chile in the air somehow, and I keep coughing and like sneezing somehow, and I'm just like, I'm getting frustrated, but we're rolling with it, whatever. Something, you know, maybe something good will come out of that. But rosebuds, I will say that, yeah, it's Friday. So just okay, like what does socializing look like in this fucking pandemic? Like I can't go dancing anymore apparently, but you know, into the club and shit like that. But it's like, okay, like, well, what does it mean to socialize still and like talk to my friends or talk to my family or maybe like dance in the living room or I don't know, like do something that's going to be entertaining and fun. And yeah, so I encourage y'all to brainstorm those ways because who knows how much longer we're going to be in this pandemic and shelter in place and whatnot. So thank y'all. But con eso, maybe we can get started with a question in terms of like, so Mads, you know, Xinampa, what does Xinampa stand for? And like what were the conditions in place that made y'all feel like, okay, we need to do something. We need to um, start an organization such as Xinampa. Feel free
Yeah,
to.
definitely. That's a great question. And honestly, it started, a group of us coming back from college, doing, our bachelor's, doing masters. Some of us still in college at the time. Uh, Coming back home, we all grew up here. We all appreciated our home and the region and what it provided for us, with our family here and everything. And looking around and seeing there wasn't very many spaces for us to just think about science, think about the connection of science and community, and think about those larger questions about technology and the effects it has on our community, and just brainstorming, being innovative, thinking about ways to solve some solutions. And those spaces were really weren't available. And as we started coming together, we were all, most majority of us are Latinx, and so thinking about our appreciation for our culture, appreciation for the people around us, our family, friends, networks, and our community. We started brainstorming on like what we can do, and we see, at the time we're seeing still now, the rise of ag tech in our region, and a specific ownership of that industry and that technology in the hands of very, very few. And we're seeing, our familia, our ancestors, our loved ones they worked in the fields, that are currently working in the fields, not having access to that, and like feeling disconnected to that rising tide of technology and agriculture in this area. And seeing the possible effects that could have in this region: gentrification, lack of resources, community resources, and lack of ownership of wealth and prosperity in that rising tide. And you can look back and you can look at Silicon Valley and the rise of the tech boom in Silicon Valley and San Jose, and similar things happened. There was only a certain handful of people that had access to that rising tech, and only those certain people prospered, while the communities in that area continued to be pushed out further and further away from their homes. And so with that understanding, we were like, what can we do? And we started connecting to a larger movement called the community bio movement. And it's a movement across the globe of sparking up community science, essentially, like finding hubs in the community to spark innovation, start access to science, technology, mathematics, engineering, art, biology, biotech, ag tech, and creating community ownership, democratizing that ownership of technology into the community. So being connected that way, we were inspired by examples that are happening in Oakland and with the counterculture labs, in Santa Clara, BioCurious, Gen Space in New York, and many, as we continue to connect with them, many other laboratories across the globe, all biotech in Ciudad Mexico, and a few others. And so, part of that inspiration, part of that process, we were thinking, we could be a platform, right? A platform for our community to like cultivate co-ops and businesses and start getting that ownership of the rising ag tech, so that they're not being gentrified and pushed out, and they have that ownership. They can have ownership in that prosperity, and invest it back into their community, and not relying on others to do it for them, but for them to do it themselves. And so, thinking about a platform, we thought about how inspirational were the Mexica and Tenochtitlan with their chinampas, and how they created and engineered these floating gardens in the middle of this lake to help not only clean the water and create aquifers, but also provided them with a platform to grow the milpa, to provide space for housing, transportation, that are still functioning to this day, and Ciudad Mexico and Xochimilco. And so we grew it. We grew out of that inspiration and decided, that how fitting would it be if we would be that xinampa for the community bio movement here in Salinas, and to help create that platform for community ownership of technology.
Yeah, that sounds dope, and I like the connection too, because we always think about how disconnected we are from our own roots. But how you put it really makes me realize that we ain't too far off. It's just thinking about how we are visualizing it today, how we're interpreting it today. And I like the fact that you're emphasizing, or Chinampa is emphasizing the fact that we need to build a connection or bring access to all these new gadgets, all these new tools to our community. That way we don't feel left behind to what's going on in the current days. So just to begin, like, what are some of the programs that Chinampa is offering? What are some things that people could take advantage of and utilize as a resource?
Yeah, definitely. You know, in the last year or so that we've been around, kind of organizing and getting the community. We started off with just trying to find partners in the community to help build out. We did a couple workshops with Digital Nest, aligning their programming with some of the stuff, like learning how to use a liquid handling robot that's usually used in a laboratory. We talked about bioinformatics, and and its connection to COVID, and how to understand COVID-19 when the pandemics first hit. And then as a pandemic continued to go on, we pivoted into distributed manufacturing PPE for our campesinos and campesinas here in the Salinas Valley, in collaboration with multiple different different entities across the United States. People were shipping us plastic and 3D printing clips and donating hats and stuff, and we were putting together these kits and delivering directly to our campesinos, campesinas in the region. And then during that time, we also started doing a lot of surveying in the community, with partnering with Migrant Ed, Monterey County Migrant Ed Office, Digital Nest, and a few others, trying to understand what people understand about the connection of food systems, agriculture, ag tech, and biotech. And so, figuring out what people see as who are those stakeholders in that community and in that industry, and how do people understand it, right? Just so a lot of stuff that we've been doing in the last year is just really trying to find that understanding and find that place, right? To understand what the community knows, how we can help work with the community and bringing these offerings. In the future, like really, really soon, we're going to start rolling out a speaker series to that's going to bring the key members in the community bio movement across the world to come and virtually speak to the community, and then talk about what it is, talk about to talk about the technology, talk about all the different aspects of that movement. And we're bringing, people from, all walks of life, all different parts of the globe. A lot of Latinx people, people from Argentina, from Peru, from Mexico, people from here in California too, across the United States. So we're excited for that, and we're partnering with a few other people, organizations in the community to do some outdoor workshops and creating bio design, and bioplastics, and creating different biomaterials that are biodegradable, and bringing that knowledge of circular systems, and recycling and using biology as a medium to not only create art but also create materials that can be used in our everyday life. So that's some of the stuff that we're working on right now, and we're hopefully rolling out pretty soon in the next year.
Orale, thanks for sharing. And I love that connection between the Chinampa and the Milpa because, reaching back to those indigenous teachings, like they're there. It's just a matter of us either being able to dig, take the time, research, understand. Because when you search for it online, a lot of the time it's difficult to find, or like it's kind of obscure where to find these teachings in terms of books or what websites to go to, or what, like if something is out there, what's accurate. So it's good to hear it from people that like understand where like the teachings, and being able to kind of go back to like, yeah, chinampa is like not a new concept. This is something that our ancestors did, and that we can learn from. But with that being said, you might have already touched on it a little bit, but what do you envision as chinampa's role in the future of ag in Salinas and Monterey County?
Yeah, definitely. I think the role that we wish to play, and we're trying to roll this out in phases, right? And like going with the community, creating understanding is, we want to be that Xinampa, that platform to cultivate and to grow community ownership of the technology here, and to create that community prosperity and wealth. And we see that by providing workshops and teachings, and helping people learn the tools of biotech, biomanufacturing, biotechnology, um, and hopefully sparking the idea that they're going to be entrepreneurs. They can be entrepreneurs. They can be scientists and engineers and mathematicians and artists, and be shapers of their own world, by creating startups, co-ops, and had the first multinational biotech company headquarters here in Salinas, owned by the community, run by some, owned by and run by people here that are invested in this community. So we're hoping to, to start that movement, to create that. But we know that that's a way off, right? Excuse me, that's a way off, and it starts at creating curiosity, interest, and then building on that, building literacy, understanding, knowledge, and then building from that. Just like the Shinampa, there's layers to it. There's different layers of building that platform, and then there's different layers of cultivating those crops up until they give you until they provide you with the nutritions and fruits and vegetables that they come through it, right? And so always looking at it that way, that there's a process of building up, and also like want to state that, like, where we want to instill in our community, right, and teach and help them understand that our ancestors were astronomers, they were engineers, they were mathematicians, they were scientists, they were biotechnologists, right? Like they they knew all of this. It may not been called science, or didn't have some formal Western name to it, but they were doing it. They were doing it before many people, and we want to make sure people in our community, our peoples, understand that like we can be that too. And it's not, it maybe seem lost, but it's in us, it's in our blood, it's in our DNA, and we can still service that. We can bring that to life, and push forward.
I have had the privilege of like getting to meet other folks similar to you that are also doing something in which they are like teaching young individuals how to build their own startups, build their own resources, and so on. And I think it's really key because when it comes down to like our communities, right, our communities of color, we are the ones that know what we need the most, right? The one closest to the problem is the one that knows the solution, right? Compared to others are trying to build things for us that are not always accurate meeting our needs, right? So as I think it's really amazing again that one of the goals that you mentioned was to teach others how to build their own startups, how to do their own little programming, and just continue to bring resources onto the community using technology. And I was wondering, like, I don't know if you have already like some things that have been in result of the work that you all have been doing, or what are some projects that are already happening that are going to be coming now in the future that would benefit our communities?
Yeah, definitely. Currently, we're thinking, we've been in collaboration with a few groups, and actually just today starting that process and thinking of how we're going to do this is, um, we want to do outdoor programming at a local community garden here in East Salinas, and with collaboration with some community partners. And there we want to, we start talking about biodesign, right? And biodesign really focuses about, using biology as that medium to design art, but also design materials. And so in that process, we want to do, we want to teach intergenerational knowledge, bringing our community elders, our abuelitas, our abuelitos, then have that knowledge of cultivation, of just of gardening, of everything, and share the knowledge, have them share their knowledge in a space with the youngsters, and the youngsters share their knowledge, right? And using that shared knowledge space to um, talk about biodesign, biomaterials, bioplastics, how to create them, how to use them, right? Like recycling, circular economies. And so, you know, that process, it's just starting. We're working with the organizers of that space to build out the space and make it welcoming, to add more resources and infrastructure to it, so that we can continue to use a community space as a space for learning and connecting with our community, and teaching those workshops. And like I said, the speaker series, that's another thing, right? We want to connect, we want to start creating that sense of interest and curiosity. And so by bringing people that look like us, that sound like us, that have similar backgrounds, that from across the region, to state, and into South America, Central America, and across the United States, to like talk about these things, and like incite that curiosity. I think that's the first step. And I think, going into those programmings, we have some ideas of doing some programmings in the future with another partner that we've been working with, to have an indoor space where we have actual lab equipment there, and doing the workshop with the lab equipment, teaching how to use those tools, and also creating more in-depth biodesign projects in those indoor spaces. So in the next year, it's going to be really big for us if we can lock in those community partnerships, and have those spaces, outdoor and open indoor spaces, to move forward on those programs.
Cool. Looking forward to hearing more about that, just because like that's so necessary and needed in our community, especially being here from Hayward in the Bay Area. You go out to like the the inner part of like the just like the bay, like the water's all fucked up, and it's just like there's so many environmental hazards that we need to like keep into account and do something about that. That's not my area necessarily of expertise, but I feel like you're touching upon, like in speaking about Xinampa, it's basically taking back the land and like taking back that ownership and that understanding and reaching into our teachings and whatnot. And so I definitely appreciate that. But with that being said, one of my questions before we jump into our call of action is if you can explain the difference between STEAM education, which is what Chinampa is doing, as opposed to like STEM education, and how can the presence of Chinampa and STEAM education positively impact youth, formerly incarcerated folks, and system impacted people?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So first and foremost is like STEAM and STEM, right? Like there's an added letter, that A, and that A is art. And so STEAM really kind of leaves out that art aspect of science, technology, engineering, mathematics. But we see it, right, as art being a key part of that, of that curriculum, of that design, of that thinking, right? So like art is art is design. Art and design is part of science. Like you gotta be creative, innovative, and think about spaces and colors and different things, like in an artistic way, to really apply science and technology. When you're engineering something, you got to be creative. With mathematics, you can be creative, right? And so bringing in that design and like artistic element to what people consider hard sciences, right? And so like really emphasize, and we want to emphasize that like art is a key part of all of that, and you can't really do science, technology, engineering, and mathematics without understanding the design and the art part of that of those knowledge bases. And for us, it's like we see that key, and we think that's like it's a key entry point um, into creating understanding and also interest, right? Like science and technology, engineering, mathematics is it can be very interesting to some people, but you throw in art and people want like they want to be creative, but people always want to have that creative outlet, and we want to emphasize that that creative outlet can be these quote unquote harder sciences and harder technologies, and so that we think bringing that art element creates an entry point, and it can be impactful with people formerly incarcerated youth, because again it creates that it really that creates the entry point that's really accessible. That's not really it's not going to be technical. You're not talking about like technical aspects of it. You're talking about art, you're talking about creativity, and it's more easily relatable. And so we want to emphasize that art in what we do.
Yeah, that sounds dope. And before we go on to like pass down the mic to you to see what's your call to action, what do you encourage others to do? Something I do want to comment on is that one of my previous experiences too when I was in college and when I was doing like research and stuff like that was that one of the activities that we did was we sat down, all of our students, right? And we're like, all right, cool. So today's activity is that we're gonna draw a researcher. We're gonna, draw him instead or them, right? Draw them, and instead color and design things around them, right? That again, portrays what you think is a researcher. And a lot of people that were drawing like a white individual, a white male, or a person with glasses, and just all these stereotypical pictures and displays of what it is to be a researcher. And then we looked at ourselves, right? And the other part of the activity was we looked at ourselves and we're like, well, you're a researcher. You don't look like that. You know what I mean? That picture doesn't look like you. You know what I mean? And so it's always thinking like, beyond the scope that we ourselves could be researchers as well. We could also be scientists, astronauts, or whatever it is we want to do, of course. And so again, that's the breaking that barrier, the interpersonal personalized oppression of us still, that the barrier that's within us that doesn't allow us to think that far. But yeah, the way you're breaking it down, the way that you're making that connection of like we are uh, astronomers, we are scientists, we are all this by blood already. It's that we inherit that. And so I like that so much, right? That is to me it's really an honor to be speaking with you today like this, and just hearing all of your wisdoms that you have, practiced and held within. And so yeah, for others that are within our community that are tuning in and also feeling inspired by the words that you've been sharing, the connections we've been making, like what is your call to action? Like what would be some suggestions or tips that you want to share with them today?
Yeah, thank you, Arturo. Thank you for all of that, and I appreciate having the time here and sharing the space, and being connected with y'all. And um, going back to what you're saying briefly, like that happened to me too, man. Like I have a background of research in psychology, and just like throughout that process, didn't not seeing that myself represented, and we want to break down those barriers, right? And create avenues and for access to our communities of color. But as for a call of action, a big part of what Xinampa calls for is community engagement, civic engagement, right? Like, and we can't disconnect like sciences, STEAM education, and involvement in your community, and knowing your community and fighting for your community. We full-heartedly feel like and believe that you cannot disconnect those things. Like Like it's part of who you. It's part of like it's part of everything. It's intertwined. And a call to action is like, well, several, right? Like get involved, get connected with organizations and community organizations, nonprofit, whatever, right? Get involved with collectives, people in your community. They're fighting for the change that you want to see. Create spaces for the change that you want to see. If you don't see that change happening, you don't find those spaces, create those spaces. Be creative, fight for it, connect with people, and never stop being curious. Never stop learning and fighting for those changes. And I think I love to see people reach out to us, connect with us, be engaged. Like I said earlier in this time here, we're gonna have some awesome stuff coming out in the next year. And love to be engaged with the community. Love for people to come and get connected, learn a little bit more about community bio movement, learn a little bit more about xinampa, about biotech, circular economy, circular systems, all of that. Intergenerational knowledge sharing, all that stuff. We love people, reach out to us, connect with us, get involved with our speaker series, and get involved with the community gardens in Natividad Creek Park. Just getting connected. So yeah, just call to action for that.
Yee, thank you. I'm feeling totally inspired. And I will say thank you for your comment, Arturo, because it also brought up the topic of like when I was younger, I hated math. And it's like, I don't know where I got it in my head that I hated math. I wasn't good at math. I couldn't figure math out. It was too hard. And I don't know if it's like a gender thing of like, oh, because I'm a woman, or like, or just in general because we're brown, or because like in our family we don't talk about, it's not strong like to talk about science and technology and engineering and math and art. And like if you can't make money in art, it's like, why are you trying to get into art, or like all this stuff, right? So it's like it unraveling a lot for me. But I also want to give you a shout out, Omar, for being involved in like the budget of Salinas process of like being in the town hall. Like you were part of that Lisa vibrancy plan. And like even now as we're planning for like the Monterey County budget, since we started the podcast in June, we've been talking about the budgets like in Salinas and Monterey County. So it's like an ongoing conversation. But definitely appreciate you being here and sharing your words with us. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And like I'm born and raised here, man. This is my community. I have deep love for it, and uh, just like I said, continuing the fight and just doing what I can in any way that I can with the resources and knowledge that I have, and with the networks and connections that I've made along the way. And the budget is a huge thing. The budget, not only the city budget but the county budget, really impacts, and it connects to all of this. Is how those decision makers decide to spend their money and where to put it, really impacts how our community can prosper, and it really shows what the values and commitments those decision makers have. And so advocating for that funding, that those monies to be spent in a way that's going to provide um, provide avenues for our community to prosper, to be elevated, to be strong, and to continue on a positive growth path, and not be held down by the larger institutions that be.
By the man. Well, con
Yeah.
eso, thank you so much. Happy Friday, everybody. And even if it's not a Friday when you're viewing this, still have a good day. Remember gratitude. Watch Big Mouth. I'm like hella plugging them in.
Love
I
that
swear they're not
show.
paying
Love
me.
that
I just
show.
really love the show. All right. Peace out, people. Thank you. Desde el espacio. Bye.